Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. My name is Hemish, and since 2023, I've been interviewing some of the most talented and well-respected quality leaders in the pharma and biotech industry to learn how they got to where they are now. This season is all about our guests and their journeys. Why they got into science, how they got into quality, their biggest challenges and greatest learns, and the highs and lows along the way. Every week, I'll be bringing you a new guest with the purpose of inspiring the next generation of quality leaders. Welcome to Season 3. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi all, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Iain Rusling, a global quality leader that is born and bred in Liverpool. He started his career as a QC technician on £9,000 a year and has become an exceptionally talented global quality leader. For anyone that would like to learn how to add value to their organization and transform their quality department and function into a real value-adding department that adds growth and trust to their organization, this is an amazing episode to listen to. Iain is an amazing leader. He's really authentic and he speaks so well and passionately about his journey and why he's so proud to work in this industry. So let's get into it. Hey, Iain, welcome to Let's Talk Quality. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not bad. Good. Iain, tell the listeners where you are based in the world right now.
I'm living in Munich, in Germany. I've been here for the last 13 years and love every minute of it.
Very good. And where was home originally? Where did you grow up?
I think most people probably from the UK will recognise a little bit of Scouse in my accent. Born and bred in Liverpool, in the south of the city. Moved around a lot during my career, and I say, the last 13 years been based in Munich.
Very good. Well, we'll get into all of that. I've given you a really brief introduction, but if you could just, I suppose, just explain who you are, what your background is, and really quickly, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, obviously, I'm Iain. I'm from Liverpool. I'm married for many, many years. Teenage son. My background is I'm a biomedical scientist by education, and I've got a technical university in Munich. I did an executive MBA there a few years back. And basically, I've been in the pharma industry or thereabouts, biotech, biopharma, for the last 29 years. Started off in the laboratories in a small biotech company, doing QC analysis, and basically worked myself up into chief quality officer roles.
Awesome. Well, we'll get into all of that whole journey and start unpacking it. Take us back to the beginning then. Where did it all start? How did you get into science?
Oh, it took a long time. I really got interested in science through kind of career days at school. So I went to Liverpool Bluecoat School, and we had once a year people would come in, parents basically talking about their careers. And pharmacy basically was the thing that really caught me. I had always favoured the sciences in my education, and the thought of being a pharmacist just really appealed to me. Unfortunately, I didn't get my A-level results that I needed to get onto pharmacy, so I got put onto a sister degree in Liverpool John Moores University with the hope of swapping over. I never made that decision in the end and carried on. It actually took me 18 months after finishing university until I actually got my first role, which was in a small biotech company based in Didsbury in Manchester called Tepnol. They're now quite a large CDMO company based up in Scotland, but back in the day it was a small DNA and RNA research company. And yeah, there was me and working in QC and my boss in QA, and that was it from a quality unit.
Wow. Okay. So how did you get that job?
I think it was actually the New Scientist.
Okay.
I actually every
back of the magazine.
Yeah. Back in the day, that was the go-to place. And I just applied, and I got offered the position because I could explain how ELISA assays worked. So yeah, they offered me the job, and I started pretty well straight away because I was just working in a local bar near where I lived with my parents. And that was it. It was a tough learning curve, being in my first industry job. And it was also tough, and I was only on 9,000 a year. when I first started. So it wasn't the greatest money in the world, but that's where I started.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, and how old were you at this stage?
Oh, I would have been around about 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
It was back in 1996.
Okay.
So yeah, about 22, 23 years old.
And did you what was your, I suppose, at that point in time, did you have an idea of how you wanted your career to pan out, or was it just a case of let's try and get a job in whatever field and take it from there?
I always wanted to obviously progress as much as I could in my career. I wanted it to be in management, and I always had a little kind of carrot and stick. My brother actually became a pharmacist and started straight out of university, basically on about 35,000. And there was me working in the labs at 9,000. So it was always a thing that I used to beat myself up over and say, right, I've got to get better. And I just kept pushing.
And why did you always want to get into management?
I think it's probably just my father and his career. He was always well, as far as when I was born, he was always in management and leadership positions and directorships. Yeah. So, I wanted to be the best I could and go as high as I could.
Fair enough. Yeah. So your first job was in this small biotech did you say Didsbury?
In Didsbury in Manchester,
Didsbury, yes. Yeah. Okay. So what was that like? What was the early what do you remember from that sort of time of your life?
I remember it. The offices were in one building with one or two very, very small labs, but the main building and main lab was in another area of the industry park. And I remember obviously walking back and forwards. I remember the camaraderie that I had with one or two of my friends and colleagues in there, and just all working together in the one lab. Me doing in goods and releasing all the precursors to the oligonucleotides that they were making. Me going around checking documents and literally signing my name hundreds and hundreds of times a day on documents to say that I'd checked everything.
Yeah, and did you know at this point, sort of, that you wanted to? You're obviously working as a QC, on the bench. Like, did you see a career path forward in quality at that point?
No, not really at that point, because everything was kind of open, and it was because it was such a small company. We were doing lots of things kind of together. It was my first soiree into writing quality systems, because we actually took the company to ISO 9000. And I learned about quality at that point. So it was one of those things. I was still young in my career and open to other opportunities, but it just so happened that from there, the company fell into some financial difficulty back in the day and laid off a lot of staff, including myself. Yeah. And then through SRG, as it was at the time, one of the biggest kind of recruiters, I managed to get a job with GSK in Liverpool in the QC labs there, based on the fact that I'd done some HPLC work.
Right. Okay. Wow. So GSK, that was your first sort of move after the first role.
The first role, yeah. I was there just on a temporary contract for 12 or 18 months, working through SRG. I then moved out of a kind of QC and I did a small development role in a company called Steripack, as it was, based in Runcorn. And I still remember going from working in labs in GSK and wearing T-shirts and jeans and trainers and going into Steripack, and we had to wear shirts and ties in the labs and shoes. Even though we weren't customer focused, we had to wear shirts and ties. And I think that was probably one of the first times I ever met kind of proper senior management. And they came in the suit, and everybody was petrified. We're all sort of going, "Oh, it's the big boss." And it was something that always kind of played in my mind, that kind of fear. And it wasn't pleasant. And I vowed to myself I never want to do that to somebody else that works in the lab.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get into how that has, I suppose, led the way that you shape your leadership perspective and philosophy. But so tell us a bit more about how the next year's unfolded, how your quality career unfolded. what you liked about quality and how your leadership sort of journey started.
Yeah, so while I was in Stereopack, that was a development position I had. But quite a number of people had moved around a bit, and I knew quite a few people that were in another biotech company in the Northwest, and I got offered a job again, kind of manufacturing and quality all together. It was the first time I built a facility. I built an oligonucleotide manufacturing facility in Runcorn. And I ran it, manufacturing, purifying, and testing all of the oligonucleotides for applied biosystems. And that build basically got me into working with MedImmune, where I was offered a job as a technology transfer manager and QC manager. And I started there building a facility essentially from scratch. It was just 4 walls and a ceiling when I moved in. And, you know, that was really the kind of ground zero for getting involved. And probably the beginning of a lot of my kind of softer skills in terms of communications and things like this. You know, working with the builders, majority of which from Liverpool or local areas, and then walking into the leadership meetings to give updates and just making things happen as much as I could. And then taking it through to basically building quality systems, bringing in the staff, technology transfers into the QC labs, and then going through the FDA and MHRA inspections and getting the licenses in place for the flu vaccine.
It's such a great little hub, that sort of Northwest, you know, Runcorn specifically. So much life sciences activity over the years, and
huge
companies that have, you know, been created and spun out of the people and the businesses over there. You know, there must have always been in that sort of era, just up and coming, you know, organizations and such a great community and a great local talent network, I suppose, that you could learn from.
It was. To get to a point, though, when you go, oh, you know, I want to change, and you'd move companies and you'd walk in and there would be half a dozen other people that you'd know from other companies. So sometimes it felt as though you were just going in a revolving door of staff around the area. And well, for me, I moved to Wrexham after MedImmune. I went back into kind of tech services again a little bit and helping the company with the project management and writing of a biological license application for the kind of botulinum toxin product, Dysport. It was unfortunately that whilst I was there, I lost my little brother to a brain tumor, and the company knew I wasn't particularly happy, and they offered me a redundancy, which I took, and I spent 6 months with my family. With my now wife and my parents, and then at the end of 6 months, I said, you know what, I'm going to go consulting. My wife was already consulting in haulage and logistics companies, and she'd started Alexium, and I basically we took it to a limited company, and I started going out and doing my own consulting myself.
Okay, so that's when you started your consulting career, but you haven't been consulting since then. I've
done a few periods over here in Germany.
Okay.
But I started out back in around about 2008 when I started Alexium Consulting. Doing the usual things back then, so kind of auditing, interim management, cost reductions, complexity reductions. The last contract I had was with a food supplement company down in the south of England, helping them get a GMP license. And it was at that point my little son was born, and I said to my wife, I want to move to Europe. I want to bring him up bilingual, and I want a bit of a change from walking into companies and people knowing me. So I was lucky enough to get a job offer for Sandoz International in their headquarters in Holzkirchen, which is just south of Munich. And I came across as the head of quality for external manufacturing for Europe, Middle East, Turkey, and Africa.
Interesting. Okay. So, and what year was that?
That was April 2012. I started. I moved across about 2 days before my birthday in April. I started in Sando, and about a month later, my wife and son moved across. And that was really kind of, I would say, getting right down into the nitty gritty and, you know, learning the global side of aspects rather than just the site-based things that I've been doing in the UK. And it was a massive learning curve, huge.
were there any key differences that sort of stood out immediately when you moved over in terms of how the different countries, different cultures, view quality, specifically?
I wouldn't. Yeah, well, there were certain aspects that obviously I'd only been dealt with the FDA and MHRA because it was a UK-based site, but manufacturing for the US, and then all of a sudden having to deal with IFA, ANSM, everybody essentially across Europe, and then finding out the nuances between each of the requirements from each of these health authorities. But I think that the biggest challenge, and the biggest kind of thing that I appreciated was the differences just in the culture of people, just how they communicate and how they like to be communicated with and how they communicate with each other, I think was the biggest thing. And learning that process was fantastic.
I bet. I mean, obviously I've grown up in the UK and worked in the UK market for a long time now working in the US market. And it's, there are so many differences between cultures and just how, how quality is seen, how quality has evolved over the different, over the years and stuff. But it's,
when I was in Applied Biosciences and MedImmune, I did spend a huge amount of time in the US, East and West Coast. And even there, you see the differences in mentalities between the cultures of East and West America. But then when you come into Europe and you literally have offices that could be only literally an hour or so away from each other, and you see the marked differences in how things operate, and the way the management structures are and the way that people are within the organization, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Fine. So you got the job with Sanofi. And then how did your
with Sandoz?
Sorry, with Sandoz. What did your sort of career trajectory then look like from sort of 2014 onwards? How did you grow your leadership career?
Sandoz, I learned a lot about the kind of dealing with people in a matrix manner. And it was the first time I had to really kind of come across that. I only had one person that worked for me in Sandoz. Everybody else, or whole of Europe, was basically matrix management. So you had to go in and you had to build the relationships up with these people and build the trust and help them to understand you were there to help them. But obviously they needed to help you first. And obviously they've got their own workloads, their own priorities, and then I go in asking them for other things. So it was a big learning curve to get that kind of mastering those skills of being able to appreciate and talk to these people and have them understand what is needed and how I can help them.
So lessons wise, if you were to start looking back from then, that kind of early 2000 era to sort of now, like what looking back, what are some of the most important or pivotal lessons that you've learned from a real quality leadership perspective over the years?
I think, the things I try and always kind of live by is just, integrity. So just being honest and transparent with people as much as you obviously can do if you're in a leadership position. There are obviously certain aspects of what's going on within an organization that you can't let go. But I always try and be as open and as honest as possible with people. When I go in and, if I'm doing a due diligence on a department, I go in and say, look, this is the goals. I'm here to help you. I want to help you get up to this level, but you need to be open and honest with me as well, and I'll be open and honest with you. And it has to be a two-way engagement and a collaboration. I think that kind of leads into the next thing is the communication and collaborations. Unless you get that, then you're not going to get very far in your career or in your tasks. You need to build the relationships and the collaborations outside of your department, outside of your site, outside of your company, to be able to move things forward.
Yeah. What do you think is, there's quality is often seen as a sort of a cost, a cost generating function, I suppose, and not a revenue generating.
I think that's one of the issues. Is a huge amount of companies still to this day that see quality as non-revenue generating and not worth the investment. I've worked in a lot of companies where you say we want to put in a quality system or we want to do an electronic system in this. And the first question is back, how much is this going to get me back? How much am I going to make from this? And
do you still get those questions?
Still to get these questions. And I think that's the wrong way to be looking at quality. And we aren't a cost. We save money, but it's not necessarily a tangible saving. We stop you having warning letters. We stop you having adverse reactions to audits or inspections. We keep things going with customers. So the very first thing a customer does is come in and do a due diligence audit on you. And if that doesn't go well and your quality people don't know what to do, then you won't get the business. And we keep your licenses to allow you to continue doing business. So we might not necessarily generate revenue directly, but we're basically keeping that revenue stream going.
But that's a real difficult thing to kind of articulate to the organization, to C-suite, to leaders, you really have to develop your softer skills. It's not Absolutely. A technical, it's not something you learn when you're in the classroom or sort of growing up. It's a real leadership development point.
It is. And
not many people can get right.
No, you have to be in it and get the experience from the trenches, so to speak. And well, I've always said as well, in terms of quality, for me, there's always two types of people in quality. There's the people that work in offices, in commercial offices, who know their GMPs and know everything. And then there's the people that work in the operational side. And sometimes it's a little bit of a downfall for the ComOps people because they don't understand how operations work. And, for me, if I was to give any QA person or any quality person some advice, is get yourself into a manufacturing facility, understand the technologies, understand how things work, speak to the operators, walk the floors, get those relationships built and understand things. You get a better appreciation and understanding of how deviation management and CAPAs work if you're able to do that.
And how would that... So yeah, that's really good advice, I suppose, for anyone sort of, junior. I suppose that people that are already in that quality leadership realm and might be struggling with this space and they might not be able to get into the manufacturing side. Like what about them? Like how can they go about becoming better at communicating with the wider business and really showing, because if that's a challenge around articulating the value of what quality brings, how can leaders currently in that space do that?
I think one of the things that helps is obviously being in an environment where that's fostered. So coming down from the very top, if the leaders and the C-suite people aren't fostering that kind of environment, it does become very hard for a site QA head. It has to come down from the head of quality or the chief quality officer and the chief operating officer, head of ops, to basically push and say we need collaboration. We work together. We're not we're not a site operational head. We're a site operational head that works for quality and operations. There has to be that dual hat on everybody. You're a quality person who works in operations is the things that need to be said and pushed down from the top. So it makes it easier then for the leaders underneath to foster those values. Yeah,
it really starts with, for people at interview stage, doesn't it? When they're interviewing with a company, they need to be really fleshing out, is this company, is this organization one that will value me, value our function, and allow me to do my job as best as I can do. But in this environment, it's really important to identify that. But that's a challenge when the job market is tough. There's a lot of competition. Some people are just sort of going into jobs. It's a real challenge for job seekers to sort of identify and flesh out whether this is an organization that values quality right from the start.
It is, and I've been in exactly that situation myself. I've been in situations where in the past I've gone, I have to take a job. I have to just take
Yeah.
a job that comes up. And I've also been in the very fortunate situation of turning jobs down, because I've been secure, I've been happy, and something's come along, and I thought, well, let's have a little look. But yeah, it's a two-way street. You're not only just selling yourself to the company's selling themselves. And if you don't get that feel that this is the right fit, then there's no reason you have to jump unless it's a necessity. And I would always say to people, take the time and think: is it the right move for you?
Is there anything you would advise to people that are interviewing right now for quality leadership positions, and they, in that process, what they should be looking out for or questioning around to identify whether this is a good fit for them?
I think some of that depends on the area of the industry they're going into. If you look at things and say, well, you've got your big farmers and then you've got your CDMOs as two examples, styles are totally different in the two companies, two worlds. Big pharma, your Novartises and GSKs and things like this, they have huge amount of money and they're quite slow, they're quite cumbersome. There's lots of red tape. But then you go into a CDMO and you've got 200 customers for a site and you're getting inspected every single week, and it's a very high paced, it's kind of high stress. I think your questions need to be tailored depending on what you're going into. But I would be asking, what's the quality culture within the company? How is quality valued within the company? What are the initiatives for quality over the next 3 to 5 years? Are you investing in electronic systems? If you have, are you now looking into the AI side of things? I did have somebody come to me the other day and was asking me to fill a questionnaire in on AI in quality. And I said, well, I still know lots of companies that are still 100% paper-based. And, they haven't even taken the leap into electronic systems. So these are the things that if you're looking into leadership in a company, ask these questions.
Yeah. And on I suppose, if you were to accelerate things, if people that were in roles at the moment, say that, for example, they're in a clinical stage biotech and they might be struggling with that, they've taken a role and it's not as they seemed, or it's not as it seemed on the face of it, and quality isn't getting that investment, isn't seen as a value adding function. In that situation, it's a real challenge and really difficult to turn things around and make the organization sort of see quality differently. But is it possible? And I suppose, like, how would you go about it if you were in that position?
I think it is. It's very important. And if you're, for instance, if you're in a clinical company and you're coming towards the end of your trials, you're thinking about doing your submissions to get your manufacturing licenses for commercial product, then there has to be a change in mentality within the company. Obviously, quality plays a massive part in clinical trials, but there's a different mentality and different ways of working when you start to look at commercial. The company has to foster this, and I've been talking with a lot of people and a lot of recruiters as well about this actual kind of company. Sometimes you'll have somebody that may be purely and utterly clinical quality focused and is daunted by the fact that they're now going to have to go into commercial. And these are the things that then the company should be looking at. Support from external, so either consultants to come in and help them with those transitions, or having somebody on their advisory boards in a quality background that can help and support the company and the quality leadership make that transition into the commercial manufacturing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Again, going back to the softer skills aspect of it, these are all really important skills that you might not necessarily have inbuilt in you. How have you gone about developing yourself and all of that stuff around communication and articulating it and working cross-functionally, collaboration, it doesn't all naturally just come, but how have you gone around developing it?
I think some of it comes for me a little bit naturally. People from Liverpool like to talk a lot. I think we're seen as quite friendly people. And I always say to my staff, the first things I say to them is, I'm from Liverpool. I like to drink a lot of coffee and I like to talk. And I like to get to know people. And I think some of that came from my father. He was in sales, in leadership roles, listening to him in meetings on the phone and things like this. But yeah, I've done courses over the years, communication courses, conflict management courses. I did a course in Columbia University on high impact leadership. And I've done my MBA as well. These were very useful. But I think the underlying thing was I had the kind of that skill underlying, and it just helped develop it a little bit more and help hone it and polish it.
But I think like a lot of good leaders I speak to, they do have that skill, all the softer skills in them as well, but they're quite proactive. They use that to proactively go out and improve themselves and develop themselves and maybe identify areas where they need developing. So they have that sort of self-awareness to go and improve themselves and get that MBA or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I suppose looking ahead, or looking at I suppose the state of the quality industry now, where do you see things as things stand from a sort of global quality cultural perspective?
I think there's obviously the huge thing with AI coming into things at the moment and it being one of the big buzzwords. But I think there needs to be an underlying appreciation of the data that companies have first and the utilization of that data, or even going digitally. As I said earlier, there are companies that I know that might have an electronic system in, but it's not being fully utilized, or they have hybrid systems of paper and electronic. I think there has to be investment and time taken to get your companies up to a particular level of integration and your kind of high level systems, your enterprise systems, and have them all functioning. But I think AI and things like this are going to be a big drivers coming up and can be great tools. But I think I had this discussion the other day. AI can never replace the human touch and the human experience. I look back to some of the things I've done and going in when we've had issues in manufacturing, and we've been trying to do deviation management and looking into root causes. And unless you're actually walking on the floor and seeing the vessels, seeing the pipe work, AI can't do that job for you. Only humans can do that. So it can be great for looking at your trending and aspects like this, but when it comes down to certain things, I can only say for the quality people out there, get on the floor, build those relationships up. So grab a QA person, grab a QC person, grab an ops person, get on the floor, walk the floors on a regular basis, and get to know how things operate, and it'll help you no end.
It's great advice, and I think that going back to your point when you were in your early QC bench career, and you had leaders coming in and in their suits, and it was probably quite intimidating. And I suppose that's a lesson that you've taken in terms of how you want to come across as a head of quality.
I always say to my people, I wear polo shirts and jeans or chinos and trainers. I don't wear suits. I don't feel comfortable in a suit. Even wearing shirts, sometimes I don't feel comfortable in. And I think if you go in with that kind of, into a laboratory, and you've got a guy straight out of university and he's been there 6 months, and you walk in and you're introduced as the chief quality officer, there's that look of fear in their face. And I think that suit builds a kind of a barrier between you. When I was first taking over QC and Explorer, I sat them down in one of the sites and basically chatted to them all and explained. I started off in the lab. I did nothing but pHs and osmolarity for 3 months. That was all I was allowed to do until I got trained in the HPLCs. I've been there, I've done it, I know what you go through, and I'm here to help you. And for me, it helps with the communication, it helps with the collaborations, and it helps with building these kind of high-performing teams. Is if you are sat there and you look like one of them. If you go in with the, I'm the big boss and I'm wearing the suit, for me, that it's already you've already lost a few points.
Yeah. Well, when you look back at your career now, then you obviously achieved a lot over the years, and I'm sure you're proud of a lot of things. But what are you most proud of from a sort of a career perspective?
I won't say okay. I'm proud of a lot of things that I've managed to achieve and things that I've done. There was one particular thing, and I apologize if I get a bit emotional about this. I was working in MedImmune, and I just had a pay rise. I hadn't been with the company very long, but a pay rise was negotiated with the whole company, and I got it. And I went out. I used to go out for a beer on a Wednesday night with my little brother. And it was pound a pint night in the Green Hills in Liverpool, in Mossley Hill. And we used to go out, and we sat down there one night, and he said, "Drinks are on me tonight." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Drinks are on me, we're celebrating." And I said, "What, we celebrating?" And he said, "Mum's just told me you've had a pay rise. You now earn more than I do." That was one of the moments in my career. Sorry, I'm filling up. That meant a huge amount to me. My younger brother, 3 years younger than me, got the degree that I wanted to get. And yeah, it was a massive thing for me to get that kind of congratulations from him.
Yeah, I bet. That's amazing.
Sorry, I'm going to have a drink of water.
Have a drink of beer if you got one after this. That's an amazing story. I think, looking, I've known you for some time now, and it's great to be able to talk through your journey, because there's a lot of things I didn't know about your background and history to, that's helped you get along there. So, this show is all about inspiring the next generation of quality professionals, quality leaders, and the stuff that you've spoken about today is really human stuff, real life stuff that from starting on the bench,
Wipe my eyes.
9K salary to get into where you are now is a phenomenal journey. So plenty more to achieve.
It's when you sit there and you look back and you say, "Geez, 9,000 a year," and where I am now, I sometimes I just don't believe it myself. I have to pinch myself, and if it wasn't for obviously my parents, obviously having a lot of faith in me, my little brother pushing me, and my wife as well, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, look, I usually end the show with some quick fire questions. You've answered one of them, which was what advice you would give to aspiring quality leaders, and I'm guessing from your comments earlier around get yourself out on the manufacturing, on the shop floor and humanizing with that would probably sort of summarize your answer in that respect.
And don't give up. You might have a boss that doesn't listen to you, but it might not be the same for the next boss. Just keep talking, keep opening the dialogues, keep having those discussions about what needs to be done, how things need to be done. And get as much experience as you can. And the best way to do that is walking, even if you're in a ComOps office, go and sit with other departments, go and sit with the validation teams, go and sit with commercial teams, purchasing teams, go and understand their functions. If you're trying to build a supplier relationship system, you need the purchasing teams. So go and speak to them, go and get their experience, find out what their problems are, how they can help you and how you can help them.
Awesome. One final question then. Who's been the biggest inspiration to you in your life? And this can be personally, professionally, a bit of both.
I think I would go back to my comment a few minutes ago. My brother and my wife. Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, I would have been surprised if you'd said anything else.
Sorry.
Iain, thanks so much for coming on the show and being really open and authentic about what you've shared. great inspiration, but also really good practical advice that people can take away and implement into their own careers. So really appreciate you coming on the show. If people want to get hold of you and speak to you, is LinkedIn generally the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is definitely the best way. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I have it open on a regular basis. So please, if anybody wants some help, advice, anything like that, please reach out and I'll try and get replies back as quickly as I can.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, thanks again, Iain. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks very much. Bye now.
Cheers, Iain.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope that you got value from it, whether you're starting your career in quality or if you're at the top of your field. Today's episode was brought to you by RX Group. I'm the founder of RX Group. We are a pharma and biotech recruitment organization focusing purely on quality assurance. We recruit consultants and senior level permanent quality professionals into the pharma and biotech industry. If we can support you, whether that be in a hiring capacity or if you yourself are looking for work, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn, visit our LinkedIn page where you can subscribe to the podcast, and visit our website, www.rx-group.io, to find out more about us. See you soon.